I'm black. Now, let's deal with this social fact and the fact of me stating it together. Maybe you don't see why we have to deal with it together. Maybe you think this is just my problem and I should figure it out by myself. But it's not just my problem, it's our problem. For example, it's our problem if you feel that I'm making an unnecessary fuss about my racial identity. If you don't see why I have to announce it this way. Well, if you feel that by letting people know I'm not white is making an unnecessary fuss, you must feel that the right and proper course of action for me to take is to pass for white. Now, this kind of thinking presupposes a belief that it is inherently better to be identified as white. It bespeaks an inability to imagine or recognize the intrinsic value of being black. Perhaps you even think that my rejection of the white identity is a sign that I'm hostile to whites. If you think any of these things, I would say you have a problem. But if you then respond to me accordingly, as if I somehow insulted you by refusing to join your racial club, then you make it our problem. It is our problem considered hostile reaction to my identifying myself as black virtually destroys our chances for a relationship of mutual trust and goodwill. It is also our problem if you think I'm telling you I'm black in order to exploit an advantage or gain publicity or make it big as an artist. Well, if you think this, obviously you must be feeling pretty antagonized and turned off by what I'm saying, so I'd be very interested in hearing more about exactly how you think my antagonizing and turning off my audience is going to help me make it big as an artist. But the larger problem would be you feeling antagonized and turned off at all. Why does me telling you who I am have this effect? Do you feel affronted or embarrassed or accused? I think we need to look more closely at why my identifying myself as black seems to you to be making such a fuss. I think we need to keep in mind that it's only a fuss if it disturbs your presumption that I'm white. So, perhaps the solution is for you not to make that presumption about anyone. That would certainly be better for me because I don't look forward to your confusion and hostility at all. I really would prefer not to disturb you. But you see, I have no choice. I'm cornered. If I tell you who I am, you become nervous and uncomfortable or antagonized. But if I don't tell you who I am, then I have to pass for white. And why should I have to do that? The problem with passing for white is not just that it's based on sick values, which it is. It's also that it creates a degrading situation in which I may have to listen to insulting remarks about blacks made by whites who mistakenly believe there are no blacks present. That's asking a bit much, I'm sure you agree. So you see, the problem is not simply my personal one about my racial identity. It is also your problem if you have a tendency to behave in a derogatory or insensitive manner towards blacks when you see them present. Now, if you have no such tendency, then you won't regard my letting you know I'm black as a problem at all, because you won't have to worry about your being embarrassed or shamed by your own behavior. In that case, I'm simply telling you something about who I am. on a par with where I was born, how old I am, which you may or may not find of interest. Furthermore, it is our problem if you believe that in any event, the social fact of my racial identity is just a special, personal fact about me. It's not. It's a fact about us. Because if someone can look and sound like me and still be black, then no one is safely, unquestionably white. No one. In fact, some researchers estimate that almost all reportedly white Americans have between 5 and 20% black ancestry. Now, this country's entrenched conventions classify a person as black if they have any black ancestry. So, most reportedly white Americans are in fact black. Think what this means for your own racial classification. If you've been identifying yourself as white, then the chances really are quite good that you are in fact black. What are you going to do about it? Are you going to research your family ancestry to ascertain whether you are among the white elite, or whether perhaps a mistake has been made, and you and your family are, after all, among the black majority? And what are you going to do if a mistake has been made? Are you going to tell your friends, your colleagues, your employer, that you are in fact black and not white as everyone has supposed? Or are you going to keep quiet about it and continue enjoying the privileges of white society while inwardly depicting yourself as a quiet revolutionary who rejects this country's entrenched conventions anyway? Or perhaps you'll combine your silence and continued enjoyment of these privileges with a kind of compensatory social activism on behalf of the disadvantaged. Or maybe you'll just try to discredit the researchers who made this estimate in the first place. On the other hand, what if research into your family tree reveals that you are, after all, among the white minority that really do have no black ancestry? Then what? Will you find a way to mention this fact casually in the course of most conversations? Will you narrate your European family history with great enthusiasm and detail at parties? How will you feel about being certifiably white? Relieved? Proud? Will you become annoyed or irritated when someone mentions the proximity to Africa of Spain, France, Italy, Greece, Israel? Or will you feel disappointed, deprived of something special? Perhaps you'll even lie and tell people you're black even if you're not. There's a nice subversive strategy for you, as long as you don't blow your cover when things get hot, which they inevitably will. Or are you going to do no research? Indeed, nothing at all about your black ancestry? Are you going to just pass out of this room after this videotape is over? Or perhaps even before, and into your socially preordained future? Are you going to put this information about your black identity out of your mind? Or perhaps relegate it to that corner of your mind that you reserve for interesting art experiences that bear no relation to your personal life. Or perhaps you'll dismiss the whole business as just another hoax an artist is trying to put over on a gullible public. Obviously, the choices that now confront you are not easy ones. They're so problematic that you may be finding it difficult to think seriously about them at all right now. It may not be penetrating as you're listening to this that you really do have some serious, hard decisions to make. But remember, now that you have this information about your Black ancestry, whatever you do counts as a choice. So, which choice will you make? You may think that no choice is required. You may believe that anyone who could pass for white has no moral right to call themselves Black, because they haven't suffered the way visibly Black Americans have. Of course, if we're going to distribute justice and moral rectitude on the basis of suffering, then happy idiots and successful Uncle Toms wouldn't get any anyway, no matter how visibly Black they are, right? Besides, if you've been identifying yourself as white, and you think that light-skinned Blacks don't suffer enough, then you have nothing to lose by publicly affirming your own Black identity. So why not try it? Just to test out your hypothesis that light-skinned Blacks don't suffer enough. Or perhaps you think people like me identify ourselves as Black in order to gain the institutionalized rewards of being Black, like affirmative action programs, while avoiding the daily experience of racism that visibly Black Americans cope with all the time. Well, let's see what we can do about that. Now that you know you're probably Black, you too have the option of publicly proclaiming your Black identity in order to get into affirmative action programs. Lucky you. Are you going to do it? No? Why not? Think of all the institutionalized rewards of being Black you're passing up. Obviously, there are much better reasons than that to affirm your Black identity. Of course, you may disagree. You may have different values, different priorities.
If you don't recognize the importance of Black American culture, you may find it easy to reject. And if you're very attached to the rewards and privileges of identifying yourself as white, you may find it virtually impossible to reject those rewards and privileges. If you feel this way, you may be reacting to what I'm saying as nothing but an empty academic exercise that has nothing to do with you. But let's at least be clear about one thing. This is not an empty academic exercise. This is real. And it has everything to do with you. It's a genetic and social fact that according to the entrenched conventions of racial classification in this country, you are probably Black. So if I choose to identify myself as Black, whereas you do not, that's not just a special personal fact about me. It's a fact about us. It's our problem to solve. So, how do you propose we solve it? What are you going to do?